gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. You are listening to the most electrifying podcast in all of internet radio today. You are listening not to the Sports Wire. That's right, not to the Sports Wire. You are listening to the Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool. That's right, you are listening to the Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool, and this is the debut episode because from the ashes of the fallen Sports Wire rises the phoenix known as the Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool. I figured it was time for a change, time for a brand new show, a brand new thought process, a brand new area, if you will. Area is probably the wrong word, but regardless, it's time for a brand new day, a brand new start. With that being said, we've got a jam-packed show for you. We're going to start it off with a bang. The motto for this show, for the Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool, is controversy creates conversation. Okay? There's a lot of controversial subjects nowadays. Whether you're talking about politics with our president or Congress, whether you're talking about even in sports and the football players kneeling for the national anthem. Okay? Going even to this past weekend with the quote-unquote March for Our Lives. There's a lot of controversial topics out there, and my goal is to get people talking. Like I said, controversy creates conversation, and that's my goal. I have a great conversation coming up today on the debut episode of the Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool, and it's my friend Brittany. We've had our ups and downs. We've been friends, obviously, but we don't see eye to eye on certain things. Okay, we don't see eye to eye on our president, on, Republicans, Democrats. We don't see eye to eye on some stuff. But there are subjects that we do agree on, and this being one of them. Gun reform. Not gun control, but gun reform. And we'll be, that's about an hour conversation. That'll be coming up very, very shortly. But I just wanted to kind of put it out there. This past Saturday, a ton of high school students and their parents and teachers and liberals and Democrats decided to march on Washington, D.C. and all around the country for the quote-unquote March for Our Lives, stemming from the February 14th Parkland High School shooting, Parkland, Florida High School, Parkland County, Florida, whatever it is, high school shooting that left 17 victims dead. And it sparked, on March 14th, it sparked that whole walkout thing, which I think is BS. Instead of going out and walking out of classroom for 17 minutes, go up to 17 children and be friendly to them. Now, that would have been a much more beneficial idea, in my opinion. Now, somebody said, oh, well, that's blaming the victims. Well, you know what? Maybe it's time we stop holding victims in such high accord. Remember one thing, okay? Everybody that has died had a past. Not everybody who dies is an angel, okay? You go out and somebody goes out, 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, whatever. Now, this is a special situation, okay? The FBI was warned about this guy. They got quite a few tips and they never followed up with it. So how is it the gun's fault for this? Nothing. It's not. The FBI should have followed up. That's the first problem. Second problem, where were the parents? Where were the parents when this guy was posting, white supremacist pictures on Facebook and wanting to, put out threats? 37 tips to the local police department. And not to mention he was on the FBI's radar and nobody followed up with him. That is the ball being dropped on law enforcement, okay? Going beyond that, okay, this kid was bullied throughout his school years. Okay? So don't tell me that these victims are innocent. Do people deserve to die in that fashion? No, I'm not saying that at all. But when it comes to this kind of a situation, yeah, that bullying plays a big part. And you know what? If somebody if a bully gets hurt, or if a bully gets gets their feelings hurt in this day and age, that's a big thing. You know what? They deserved it. Do they deserve to die? No. I will always say that they don't deserve to die. But at the same time, if the kid did not get bullied, then where would we be? The kid wouldn't have. If the kid had more friends, maybe he would have thought twice about going to shoot up the high school. Sad state of affairs. Sad state of our country that we live in, where the Democrats and the liberals are using these high school kids to push their gun control agenda. And there's so many people. There should be gun reform, absolutely gun law reform. But you got to remember one thing: if you pass gun control laws that ban all weapons and anything over a handgun or whatever, well, to me, because the military still has those kind of weapons, they're not available for civilian use. Oh shoot! What's to stop the government from going over and taking us over? Now, of course, that's a worst case scenario, but that's how Nazi Germany started, by Hitler banning all the weapons from the citizens because they couldn't have the arms. Think about that. Second Amendment of the United States Constitution says that you have the right to bear arms. Should there be a mutiny or whatever, should you have to defend yourself from the government. And there will be a militia to defend yourself. And I feel that's perfect, because I'm not saying the government's going to come down and take everything down. That's why we have a two-party system. We have Republicans and Democrats. If you have a supreme leader, a supreme dictator, like is in North Korea, like is in Cuba, like was in Nazi Germany, that's where you have a problem. Okay, is where you come into the whole idea of a supreme dictator. President Trump is not a dictator, and President Trump is actually working for all Americans, regardless of who wants to see it. The fact of the matter is that he is working for all of us. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to get to my interview with Brittany. Okay, like I said, it's about an hour long. It's a really good conversation. Listen to it all. Send your feedback on Twitter at BigDaddyCoolVA, or on email sportswire, BLESN @gmail.com. Definitely check it out, and I will be back at the end for just a quick wrap-up. Enjoy it. You're listening to The Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool, right here on Blackline Entertainment and Sports Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in this week to The Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool. My name is Big Daddy Cool, Vinny Apicella, and I'm sitting here with my friend Brittany. Hot issue over the past month, basically for the past almost 20 years, although it seems to be at more of a fever pitch now, is not specifically gun control, but definitely how to keep school shootings from happening. I mean, we've seen a surge of it over the past 3 years, even before Sandy Hook. But then you go to Sandy Hook, and then just with this latest one a month ago with Parkland High School in Florida, or Broward County, Florida. And everything is going through the Congress, and people are trying to figure out what side to be on or whatever. I think the most important thing is to keep our kids safe. Brittany and I have never always seen eye to eye on a lot of political stuff, but I wanted, and that's to say the least. But I wanted to bring her on because I know that she's very knowledgeable. She's one of the most well-read people that I've ever met. So I wanted to bring you in to kind of get your take on gun control and what your thoughts are on it.
So, being a mother myself and being a daughter of somebody who is a member of the NRA, who has a concealed carry permit and carries every day, mind you, my dad is also a avid church goer. He goes to church every Sunday. He works for a Christian company, he's going to be leaving this summer to go to college to be a still carries, still thinks it's all right, so everything's totally fine. Nobody's scared. He's a great guy. The problem now is with gun control, people want to take guns away is more what I've been seeing rather than just upping the qualifications in order to get a gun, which, quite frankly, there's a few things that you shouldn't have a gun if you have a mental health issue. Then I have mental health issues myself, so I can say that. There should be more extensive background checks for it. There should be more psychological tests, including not just a regular background check, by a trained psychotherapist or psychiatrist in order for people to get guns into their hands. Because it can be very useful. There was an instance in Texas, I believe it was, where a civilian armed with I forget what kind of gun it was, but he was armed, stopped a shooting on his own. Because
I remember that.
Yes, because he had a weapon on him. Not everybody should have them though, which is why even coming from a family, my entire family has guns. They all have permits. They're very, very open about it. It's not a bad thing as long as it doesn't get into the hands of a bad person.
Right. No,
that
I
being
completely
said-
agree with.
What?
I completely agree with that. And I'm glad you brought up the shooting down in Florida. I believe it was at a church, and it was one of the attendees who had his gun on him and was able to basically shoot the. I don't remember if he shot him to kill or killed him, or if he just injured him enough for the cops to get there. But the fact is, he had a gun. He was able to basically disarm the situation. And
prevent more lives from being either injured or lost.
Right. And that's not even talked about as much as, what's going on now, and just, like you said, take away guns, take away guns, take away guns. And people are blaming the NRA, people are blaming, they're placing blame everywhere without the goal of getting something accomplished.
Without even thinking about what is actually going on. Now,
Right.
I'm not one to say that if the government decides to take guns away from people completely, then, we're going to have a problem. Because, everybody has the right to bear arms.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is they want to take away assault rifles. Fine.
Right.
Take away the assault rifles, that's totally fine. But if we as civilians don't need them, then you as an officer of whatever, whether it's law enforcement or anything else, unless you're standing on front lines overseas in a war,
Right.
there is no reason for
You're
anybody
exactly right.
to have an assault rifle or even a semi-automatic or anything of that caliber. There is no reason for it.
And you're right. And military grade guns and firearms have been banned for civilian use for many, many years. The biggest misconception is that, even going specifically to the AR-15, is that AR stands for assault rifle. AR does not stand for assault rifle. It's actually the company that puts out that specific gun. And it could look like a hunting gun with a wooden back, or it could look like one of the military-grade guns that have been used in shooting. It is a semi-automatic weapon, and it's not military-grade. A lot of people think that because it looks like a military-grade weapon, that it's a military-grade weapon. That's a common misconception now. But with that, I agree with you that, we all do have the right to bear arms. Should we have stricter background checks? Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things with that President Trump did that I don't agree with, was taking away the Obama era background checks, stringent background checks about getting guns. The problem we have is that you know, a lot of people say, oh yeah, well, and this is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I enjoy, and I posted this on Facebook yesterday. I enjoy listening to Jim Cornette, who's one of the best managers ever in wrestling. We differ completely when it comes to politics. He's a stringent Democrat. And he said, well, let's all ban guns because then nobody will be able to get guns and, you know, we'll be fine. That's not how it works. Because the idea behind a criminal is that they break laws. If they want
heroin is illegal.
I agree.
Nobody's going to do it, right?
Exactly. Heroin is illegal, and that's one of the biggest epidemics in this country.
Exactly.
You make guns illegal, then the law-abiding citizens can't get guns because they're like, oh, well, it's illegal. Okay, fine. Criminals break laws. So
exactly.
What's to say they're not going to get a gun or a firearm or even a semi-automatic weapon from the black market, from the underground web, from wherever.
What is this law doing that's going to prevent these criminals from getting it anyways?
Exactly.
Again, such as heroin, cocaine, and all the other drugs and everything else that they get. They already get guns over the streets, and that are not legal. So what's going to stop them from continuing to do that?
You're right, and that's why so many police stations every so often have the gun buyback program, no questions asked, turn in the gun, we'll give you whatever, Walmart gift card or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And 95% of them are either illegal or they have the, you know, and they have the serial numbers scraped off or modified to make it illegal or whatever. And that's why those happen, because people get firearms outside of the legal means. So why are you going to ban firearms from law-abiding citizens who have it for self-protection or self-protection or whatever, self-defense? That's what I'm looking for. Now, do you agree with arming teachers and putting armed guards in schools? Because we saw with the Parkland shooting, there was an armed guard that was supposed to be there, but apparently he was told not to go in during the shooting.
So the problem is that am I for teachers being trained properly and given extensive background checks? Absolutely. Am I for putting veterans in schools, give them jobs to, you know, protect the kids? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The problem comes in where you have these dilemmas that these people have, you know, because this man, if he was told not to go in during the shooting, well, then what is he there for?
Right.
He signed up for a job knowing full well, just like police officers do every day, just like firefighters do every day, just like military personnel do every day. Signed up for a job knowing that there's very real possibility that they're not going home that night.
Right.
You know, and if they're going to step up and say, yes, I accept this job, I'm fully aware of what can happen, why are you going to prevent them from going into that school to protect a bunch of children?
You're right.
Your children, my children, your sister's children, your family, your nieces and nephews, and everybody else. Mm-hmm. Why are you going to do that? Because then you're just going to turn around and you're going to look stupid for having said armed guards there for zero reason.
Right, and you know, apparently, obviously I don't know the full story behind it. All I know is what I've...
Which nobody does, and that's why I'm saying, if that's the situation, then there was no reason to have him there in the first place, if you're going to make him if you're going to tell him not to go in. So if that is the situation, then there was no reason for it.
You're right, and the problem that I see with it is the press conference that was held the day after or a couple days later that we were told that the armed security guards did not go into the school during the shooting. The police chief had said that he was about to be reprimanded or suspended, and instead he chose to retire and resign with full pension and everything because he had enough years on the force. So to me, that's almost like saying, well, and then the story comes out saying that he was told not to go in. So we don't know the full story. Did he just decide not to go in on his own? Or what? If
he decided not to go in on his own and he was like, you know what, do this, I'm not doing this, I want to go home tonight. And this isn't what I signed up for, I thought this was going to be an easy job. well, that's where you were wrong the first time, and you should have thought about that, because that's the other thing, that if they're going to do this, they need to put them in real situations, like they do with military.
You're right.
Put them in real situations and put them through extensive, something like basic training where they have to go through, and there's like a fire drill, if you will.
You're right, and I agree with that.
And go through something like that so that they know what they're getting into. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Give them.
You're right.
But if it was him saying, hey, this isn't what I signed up for, then you know what? No, I do not believe that he should be walking out with full pension and everything else like that. But if it came down to the fact where they told him he was not to go into that building, that's not his fault. I still would have gone into the building. I mean, that's just me. But we don't know what the situation was.
From what I heard, and this is just more information coming out, that 2 off-duty SWAT team members were in the area and did go into the building apparently, and were one of the first lines of defense to help stop this or scare the shooter away, because I guess they blocks away from the school.
And that's what you sign up for when you take those types of jobs.
You're right, and I agree, and I feel like that would the idea of putting armed veterans or retired cops, and again, you have to. It's not just a job to fill time. You have to be on your toes. It's funny because seeing, when I was in prison, seeing some of the correctional officers there, it almost looks like, they went through their basic training and they went through their physical and, got all up to physical perfection or whatever they need to be, and then they just let it go. I'm a bigger guy.
There's no continuous training.
Right, and that's a problem. I feel like, whether it's a correctional officer, a police officer, even a veteran, somebody who's in the military that become a security guard, could become a cop, could become a school security officer. They should have yearly training, just to stay in shape, yearly physicals so that, the military keeps a dossier on them saying, oh, well, you know what? This guy has gone to all of his active, post-military trainings, post-military physical. He's in tip-top shape. He would be great for the job. And that would help with a lot of these veterans coming back from war. Now, obviously, if they're suffering badly from PTSD and something, maybe they shouldn't be having a weapon. But,
yes, no, there's situations where, where I believe, if you're a retired veteran or you're a retired cop or whatever, if you're at, if you, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of 65-plus-year-old men and women that I know that are in very good shape and, can even outrun me.
Yeah.
Almost 27 years old and can outperform me. So I'm not discriminating any way, shape, or form on age, but there should be, regardless of what age you are and what disability you have, if you want to do it, they should give everybody the opportunity to. And background checks obviously need to be done. Psychological tests need to be done to make sure that it's not somebody who's going to, for lack of a better phrase, flip the switch and completely go nuts. And make sure that they are physically capable of handling a situation if there is an active shooter in a building.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
They need to be trained in crazy situations as well, such as hostage situations. They need to be trained in all these things, and that's the problem where I don't see it happening.
Right. Switching gears, kind of keeping on the same subject, but switching gears a little. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's been about 20 years now. Now you're 10 years, just about exactly 10 years younger than me. And so when Columbine
For the
happened,
record, I am a millennial.
As a matter of fact, if you look at the actual year, so am I. But Columbine happened in 1998. You were only 7 years old. And that was the first major big school shooting, at least that the media made aware.
I do remember it, though.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know, I was in high school at the time, and I know at that point after that happened, the high school banned
everything
trench
changed
coat,
from
long
that point.
trench coats, and some other stuff, and there were obviously changes that happened immediately. Even reading, going back to like the 50s and 60s, and definitely in the South, it was big. People, especially a lot of the Southerners, they drove pickup trucks. They had a gun in their gun rack going to high school. No school shootings happened. Fast forward to the late 90s, going into up to today. What happened? Why is there such a big outburst now? Even going back to Sandy Hook, and why has there been such a big outburst now of these school shootings?
You want my honest opinion?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, 27 years old. I have a 7-year-old of my own.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with parents today is they're not disciplining their children the way that I was disciplined when I was a child.
Yep.
They're not being disciplined the way that my parents were disciplined when they were children. Everything is excuse after excuse after excuse. Now, don't get me wrong. My 7-year-old son has autism.
Mm-hmm.
So he's on the spectrum. I have a 4-year-old nephew with ADHD. So and I have mental health issues myself. But that isn't an excuse. Well, because that's what you hear now is, the school shooter, he was mentally ill.
Mentally ill or deranged. Right.
Or they had mental issues, or don't put them in jail, they need to go to a psychiatric hospital. That may be the case, but it stems back to how did that child or young adult, or how old was the Newtown shooter, in his 20s?
I believe he was 18. I think he was in his late teens.
Anyways, all these young adults and children who have access to these guns, first of all, you shouldn't have any type of access to that. Your parents you should have a safe locked up. They shouldn't have anything. They can look at it, they can see it, whatever, but they shouldn't have a code. They shouldn't have a key to get in.
Right.
They shouldn't know where the key is to get in or where the code is to get in. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That should be locked up when it's not attached at your hip.
Yep.
Period. End of story. If you do have them in your house. Now, granted, as we said previously, there are ways for children to get them, or people to get them on the streets or whatever, but I highly doubt anywhere, a 16-year-old who has mental health issues is going over, to the corner of Park in Washington, in Hartford, looking for somebody who's selling a illegal gun.
Right.
It's just not happening.
You're
So
right.
they're getting them because of the negligence of parents now. The problem is that everybody wants a trophy these days for participation. Everybody wants their kid to be recognized. That's not how it works.
Right. That's something that you and I agree on.
There's very few things that we do agree on, but, the ones that we do, we wholeheartedly agree on.
Right. And that's definitely something I agree on. But I think it's I don't know if it's necessarily entitlement to, the participation trophy.
It's not,
syndrome.
don't get me wrong, it's not just parents, and it's not just that. It's society as a whole. When I was growing up as a kid, my parents were always, there, but, they were inside. I was outside playing with my friends,
Mm-hmm.
going down the street to the park, riding our bikes, going to my friend's house, going in the pool, and if I acted up at my friend's house, my friend's mother had every right to beat my ass if she wanted to.
Yep.
My mom
What?
gave her permission.
Mm-hmm.
When we went to school, it was no joke. You got into trouble. You got into trouble.
Yeah.
You didn't want your parents to get called.
Yep.
Nowadays,
I know.
even as me being in college, I see it more so that kids don't give a shit about anybody but themselves and what they got to do.
Well, my thought on that is, now obviously it's never one issue. It's never one thing or another. It's not just, the lack of discipline. Yes, the lack of discipline is a problem, but it stems from a much bigger thing. when I was growing up, and now obviously me being, 10 years older than you, it's like up until my parents got divorced, my mother was home with me. My father worked, my mother was home. And they were able to sustain a mortgage on my father's pay. When my parents got divorced, then my mother had to go to work. But we've seen this more and more often that, number one, there's a lot more single-family households, or single-parent households, I should say. And there's a lot more multi-generational households because a single parent, 95% of the time, can't survive raising children on their own because the cost of education
And if they
has gone up.
they're working 3 jobs.
You're right, and they're never home. So this child is always with either, if they're lucky, they're with grandparents, or they could be at a daycare, or they could be in a school program that stops at a certain time, or whatever. And
which is where part of the lack of discipline comes in. Now,
right.
I'm not saying it's all because the parents don't, beat their kids. I'm not telling anybody to beat their children.
Right.
But there's got to be consequences for things. And unfortunately, if that parent isn't around, because even when I was a kid, let me tell you, I was scared to death of my mother. If my mother came home and my stuff wasn't done, because my mom worked second shift when I was growing up in high school. So we got up, we went to school, we got home, and my mother was at work. We didn't get home till 11 o'clock at night. So if that house wasn't clean and our stuff wasn't picked up, or we didn't have our homework done and we just gallivanted around town for the afternoon and went home, we got in trouble. Yeah. But the problem is how are you going to discipline your child if you're not there?
Right.
And I'm not saying that, I'm not putting any parents down for not being there because I get it. It's hard. You have to work your butt off in today's economy in order to afford a mortgage and all the bills on a single parent income.
Right.
Especially if you have more than one child.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So therein lies the issue. It's not, lack of discipline isn't because, parents gone soft. It's because there's no way for them to discipline their children. Because if they're home to discipline their children all the time and make sure they don't leave the house and they don't do this or they don't do that, they're obviously not at work. They can't pay their bills. Mm-hmm. Which is why it's a problem.
You're absolutely right. And then even if the family stayed together and parents, whether married or just living together, and it was two parents, you still need 2 incomes. So both parents
it's still very hard.
It is.
Still very hard.
Especially in Connecticut, being one of the highest tax states in the union. And that's the unfortunate reality of today's society is that, inflation has gone up so much and wages have not. It's unfortunate. There was a study done that in Connecticut, to afford a 1-bedroom apartment, you literally have to be making close to $26 an hour. Minimum wage in Connecticut, I believe, is $11.50, if that.
Minimum wage currently is at $10.10 an hour.
10.10. So, and a lot of people say, fast food workers should be getting $15 an hour, $15 minimum wage, which, I agree that minimum wage has to go up, but, society as a whole, now you said that your son is 7 years old, which means you got pregnant at 20, correct?
I gave birth right before I turned 20.
Okay. My son is 12. I was 24, but his mother was 19 when he was born. Are people having children? Well, and I can't even say people are having children younger now than they ever were, but I feel like maybe they're having. Now, you and I both have only one child, but there are people that are younger than us that have multiple children.
Yes.
Do you think that could be leading to the problem? That people are just, and you hate to blame it on people just being careless about sex, but
Actually,
could that be a problem too?
to be quite honest with you, and you know well that I am in medical school, and I'm going through all of this, and I'm learning all these new things about generations, because that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be taking care of older people and being a patient care specialist. So it's actually found that even though it seems as if there are lots of babies being born and more people are getting pregnant at younger ages and, whatever have you, there are more older people and those in the generation before us than there are children being born right now. There is not enough repopulation that's been going on because of the fact that us as millennials don't have, can't afford to go out and, buy homes and do these things like you were able to do 30 years ago.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because of the inflation.
Yep.
So, granted, yes, there are lots of other people right now that are having, being careless about sex or however that's going on, or, maybe they are in a position where they have support from other people and, it turns out well. But I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue, like I said, lies where there's not a way for mom or dad to stay home once you have a baby. Regardless.
Right.
It's just not, unless you're making 6 figures a year, and even at that, sometimes it's not enough.
Right.
It's very hard. Just now, I think 7 years ago, when I had my son, it was over $10,000 to have my son in the hospital and to give birth. It is a lot of money to have a child, and that doesn't stop. Even when they turn 18, it doesn't stop.
Right.
As much as parents would like to turn around and and not to be mean, but say, okay, you're an adult now, go out into the world. I'm 26 years old, about to be 27, and I still live with my parents because I still can't afford on one income that I have to go out and get my own apartment and to pay all my bills.
Right. No, and I understand that. And, I mean, I'm 36, going on 37, and I am finally in a place, and it's not even it's a studio apartment, but it's the first time I'm living on my own, other than having roommates or whatever. I can't even raise my son because I can't afford a 1-bedroom apartment even to be able to take care of him. So trust me, I get it. It's tough. And even still, being 36, 37 years old, I'm still, asking my parents for help every so often. And I think that's a sign of the times that, unfortunately, it's just you can't survive on what the wages are. And of course, people say, a lot of people say that, fast food workers or whatever should be, for teenagers in high school. But the problem is, a lot of people who have gone through college and have their degrees and are professionals, they still can't find work in their industry. So they have to take whatever's available. I had a great job at the Marriott. In November, I lost the job through no fault of my own and for reasons that had nothing to do with my work. But because I had to get a job because unemployment wasn't cutting it, the job I took, it was a $3 an hour pay cut. So, where do you, where's, I've said it from the very beginning that, and this is, switching topics from gun control to staying on the same thing, is that in America we should be a right to work country. Unfortunately, it's down to the states, and too many states are employee at will, which puts the control into the company's hands. Have you ever had an issue where a company just fired you for no fault of your work ethic?
Yes. Yes, I have.
It's one of those things where we want people to work, you know, and me being, you know, a convicted felon with a felony conviction on my record, you know, it's like I'm always at the disadvantage. And, you know, regardless of my work ethic, why, you know, you're going to let me go because of something like that? That's absolutely or not hire me for something better. That's an unfortunate problem in this society, in this country, in this world, is that if you have a black mark on you, regardless of how much you rehabbed, regardless of how much, you know, that's a mistake in your past, and, you know, you will never get it past a certain point.
No, I know you said that we kind of got off topic, but to be quite honest with you, I think it all kind of, even though gun control is its own topic and mental health is its own topic and the wages and everything else is its own topic, I think they all intertwine with each other because of the economy that we live in, because of the way that things are these days. Now, like you said, being a convicted felon, it is hard for you to get a job. The problem the reason I believe that, you know, people coming out of prison for whether it's a year or 10 years, the problem is that there is no reintegration program to get these people.
Well, there is. It's just not what it should be.
No, and
like,
that's what I mean. They're not real reintegration programs. You know, they get put into halfway houses, or they get put into rehab houses, or they get put, you know, something like that. But that isn't reintegrating them. If you look at other countries where they have, first of all, we have the highest rate of inmates in the world.
Right. Oh,
the highest rate of incarceration in the entire world. Yeah, but you look at other countries, and their rates are low because of the fact that when these people leave prison, they're not going back.
Right.
Why? Because they've been reintegrated into the community. Now, you're in prison for 10 years. You go to prison in 1990. You get out in 2000.
The world has changed.
So much different from when you went in.
Even me going in for 18 months, when I went in,
that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter how long you're there.
When I went in, smartphones weren't even a really big thing. When I came out, almost everybody had one. You know, and it's like, holy crap, that was just a year and a half, you know? But I completely agree with you. And there is and especially because I don't know about other states, I don't know about federal facilities, but unfortunately, you know, and this goes back to, you know, the gun laws, I don't think we need new laws. I think what we need is people being rehabbed, and I think we need just education. And it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, schooling education. It needs to be where instead of just going out and buying a gun and having a 3-day or 30-day wait period, in order to, you know, and I know, don't get me wrong, in order to have a permit for a gun, you have to pass classes. I get that. But, you know, it has to be more in-depth, you know, and, you know, but again, you know, people are getting your guns off the black market, so they don't have to worry about it because they're illegal anyways.
But how do you stop these criminals from obtaining these guns?
You're right.
The way that you do it is you take these criminals, they do bad things, they go to jail, they do their time.
Yep.
When they're getting ready to be released to go back into the world. Now, if it were me, and this was happening to me, and I went back out into the real world, and I'm realizing that I don't know anything about what's going on these days, and I don't know anything about this technology, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go right back to what I did, because that's what I know.
Yep.
I know how to make money by selling drugs or selling guns or being a prostitute or whatever it is that these people were before they went into jail.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if this is all they know and they're being thrown back out, basically being thrown to the wolves,
Yep.
You're damn straight they're going to go right back to jail because they're going to go right back to what they know.
You're right.
Because that's all they know.
You're right, and I saw it firsthand. The problem is, especially in this country, we put people in prison that really don't need to be there. You know, people who smoke pot, you know, if it's illegal in your state or whatever. You know, in Connecticut, it's been decriminalized to a certain extent, hasn't been legalized, except for medicinal purposes. But even on the federal level, you know, they're putting people in prison just for smoking pot or getting caught with pot. No, they don't need to be in prison. Give them probation or
Not
whatever.
even just that, but they're putting people in general population in prisons that should be in psychiatric hospitals.
Right, that too, because
Instead
psychiatric
of putting
hospitals
them
are being
in,
closed down.
and yes, instead of putting them in a psychiatric hospital where they should be, where they can be monitored and where they can get therapy that they need help
Mm-hmm.
for whatever conditions it is that they have, i.e. people with schizophrenia,
Yep.
or, you know, bipolar disorder or multiple personality disorder or it's sociopaths,
Right.
stuff like that. They need to be in a psychiatric hospital, not in general population for 10 years and then thrown back outside.
Right.
Okay, well, have a nice day. We hope you enjoy being free. That's not how it works.
You're right. I
Don't
mean,
do that to
even
people.
in the prison that I was in for the majority of my stint in in Osborne, which is only a medium security prison. It was the Supermax at one time, but then they lessened it. But they have one wing that's dedicated to people who are mentally ill, and that's it. Just one wing of their prison, and it's not like they have nurses in there or whatever, or groups or whatever. They're just basically locked up 23 hours a day, and
They just have them in a separate wing.
right. And that's the unfortunate truth. And I had brought this up to somebody, because there are. I mean, even if you look at like Urban Explorer websites, all these mental facilities, mental hospitals, psychiatric, whatever the PC term is nowadays, for the psychiatric hospitals, are being closed down. Whether it's lack of funding,
You
or
want to know why?
Go ahead.
They're being closed down because people are just now being retrained and being properly trained in how to deal with these people who have schizophrenia, dementia, multiple personality disorder, or sociopaths and everything else. Before, you could just come right out of, working at McDonald's and say, okay, well, I want to work in a hospital now. And I've worked at a group home that was specifically for older people. They were all mentally disabled. They had their own problems and health issues. And they all came from the Mansfield hospital that shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Every person in that house came from there. And I'm reading their books, and this one was raped. This one had electric shock therapy done to him because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And he was a very nice man, was nonverbal, and had autism, and couldn't speak. Couldn't tell you what he wanted.
Right.
But you knew what was going on if you just watched his signs. Well, no, we want to try to make him better, so we're going to give him electric shock therapy.
Yeah. And
Well,
some people will never
girl-
be made better, quote unquote. Some people
Yeah.
will never be made better. You just have to understand who they are, and you're right. Pay attention and watch for signs.
And see, that's where I'm really excited about the medical field right now, is because they're really more and more people are going into it because they actually care.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's going to be my grandmother one day, and I'll be damned if I walk into a hospital and I find out that my grandmother is being raped or given, electric shock therapy. That is
Right.
not going to happen.
And my grandmother,
back then,
we just put my grandmother into a home because she's suffering from dementia back in December. I mean, she's at the end stages, but she can't live on her own anymore.
and that's where it becomes a big issue, because if your grandmother has dementia, she can't tell people
Right. What's
what's
going on?
happening. So she doesn't even know who you are.
Yeah.
She doesn't remember her husband. She doesn't remember her childhood. She remembers nothing.
Right.
She could be reading an article at one point and be really excited about it, put it down, walk away for 5 minutes, come back, see the newspaper again, and see the headline of the article, get all excited all over again, and go right back into reading it to you like she didn't do just 5 minutes ago, because she doesn't know.
Yep.
So how are these people going to tell you about they're being abused in one way, shape, or form if they don't even know what's going on?
You're right. But
And that's the problem. People aren't, more people now are doing it because they care. And before, like I said, it was just another job. And
right.
they could get away with it because we didn't have the technology we do now. There wasn't cameras. There wasn't, video or voice recording or anything like that. There was nothing.
Yep.
So you could go down the hall to room 108 in where Jane Doe is sitting, and he, is nonverbal and can't talk, but displays bouts of rage, and rape her over and over again, and then leave, and nobody's going to know the difference.
Yep. You're right. Another reason that I see a lot, like we had said, that a lot of mentally ill people were going to prison instead of mental health institutions is because the government doesn't get paid for people in mental health institutions. They get paid per inmate for prison. I think the last time, at least in Connecticut, from what I heard, Connecticut gets something close to $28,000 a year per inmate in prison. For food, for clothing, for whatever. The basic necessities.
And you know what? To be honest with you, there are some people that are in prisons that a 48-cent bullet would do much better for.
You're right, and that's why I'm a big proponent of the death penalty. I feel like and the country, unfortunately, the death penalty nowadays is death by old age, if there is even death penalty in the state, and that's because they get X number of appeals. They tend
But
to
not
go
just
from
that. It's because people fought so hard for the fact that, yes, they are still human beings and they still have basic human rights. But for me, that stops when you take those same basic human rights from another person.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Or multiple people.
Right. Like the guys from the Texas home invasion. Perfect example. The way I look at it is they both received the death penalty, but I guess because right afterwards Connecticut abolished the death penalty, now they're trying to appeal their death penalty because they're saying it's unconstitutional. And then what I don't get is like Stephen Hayes, one of the guys that was in the Texas home invasion, tried to commit suicide multiple times. I'm not ever an advocate for suicide. I never do. But for somebody who's on death row, that almost makes your job easier.
No, I can't speak for those people who are in that situation because I would never put myself in a situation where I would have to be put on death row. At least as of right now. Now, if you mess with my child, maybe a different story. But, that's never current.
Right, exactly.
So, but when you have people who go in and do these things and they kill, whether it's one person or multiple people, doesn't matter. Every life is worth the same amount, If they show, seeing this is hard because I know for the families of those who were victims, it's probably, they took away my child, they should be given the same idea, which I fully agree with, absolutely 110%.
Yep.
But if this guy, depending on why he was committing suicide, if it was because, he was committing suicide because he wanted to get out of lethal injection or whatever it was that he was getting. Or was it because he legitimately felt sorry for what he did?
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that because he feels sorry, he should go back out into the world. But if he was doing that because people do change. It's not very many, but people can change.
Yeah.
And they can see, I've seen it firsthand. People can change, and they can change their ways, and they can, turn to God or turn to, whatever it is that they, decide to look to.
Mm-hmm.
Change their ways, become a totally different person. There should be, even at that, there should be screenings. Because,
right.
People can be faking it. But if everything goes through and everything checks out, he, psychologically is actually, it's proven that psychologically that he actually does feel sorry, or that, he feels a tremendous amount of remorse. Okay. Well, we'll let you sit in jail for your time being, and maybe we'll give you some parole at some point.
Right.
The option to go
Yeah.
for parole. But you still took somebody's life.
Right.
So you should still have to pay for that. But like
No,
I
I agree.
said, people do change. And that's where I think why they took away the death penalty.
I agree with you, and I do. I mean, I know firsthand people can change because I've seen it. I've been there. I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. I mean, not everybody who commits murder is a sociopath that has something. Not everybody who, not everybody who commits murder is somebody like, a Jeffrey Dahmer or Charles Manson or somebody who,
Ted Bundy.
right, who is a serial killer. I mean, and then you have the degrees of involuntary manslaughter and certain things. That's a whole another thing in itself.
Exactly.
But I feel like, so one of the, before we go, because we're been talking for close to an hour, I do want to ask you something. I mean, you mentioned that your son is autistic and he's on a scale. Was he autistic, from birth, or was it something that developed after after a certain amount of time, or?
So, when children are on the autism spectrum, they can be anywhere from high functioning to low functioning, Asperger's, or now they've changed it all in the DSM. It's been changed, but there's a whole. So what happens is we didn't find out until he was a little after he turned 2.
Okay.
And unfortunately, with autism, it's not something you can really detect at birth.
Okay.
Because it's more of, I guess, situational. Because we noticed because he wasn't playing with his toys like most kids do. He wasn't showing affection like kids do. He wasn't making eye contact. He wasn't meeting his milestones. His fine motor skills and those things were not. He wasn't able to. He didn't have them.
Okay.
Basically, from when he was supposed to. They weren't showing up. He couldn't pick things up with his fingers, like pick up, how children could pick up a Cheerio and put it in their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't do that with his fingers. He would put his whole hand into the bowl, grab a handful of Cheerios, and then just open his hand fist first into his mouth.
Okay.
There's something that he did called stimming. So what he would do is he would put a car down on the corner of the coffee table, and he would just stare at it and move his head back and forth and just watch it out of the corner of his eye. And then obviously not talking, he all he did from, up until a couple of years ago when, we started getting him into therapy and everything else, he just made noises, laughing, grunting, screaming, and it's something that, it's not something that you can detect once the baby comes out. It's something that as they grow, you realize
now,
that they're not saying stuff.
Has he always been not reaching his goals, and something gradual that by the age of 2 you saw he was way off? Or was he, spot on for a while and then you noticed him gradually going
No,
backwards?
he started progressing and he started doing really well, and then all of a sudden, he wasn't meeting his goals. The milestones he was supposed to meet as a child.
Okay. So one of the biggest controversial topics is, the link between vaccines and autism. Do you see a possibility of that?
To be quite honest with you, I think it's all hogwash.
Okay.
And because, you can go with vaccines being the problem, but, then, you look to the left and every food that you eat, you put in your mouth is genetically modified, has pesticides, is, treated with all these other things, and has these fillers, and has these artificial sweeteners and artificial this and artificial that, and nothing is real anymore.
Right.
And that's the problem. Even milk you can't get straight. It's not straight from a cow anymore. It's pasteurized. It's got hormones in it that come from the cow because these cows are being fed hormones. And to be quite honest, I don't think it really. Vaccines might have something to do with it, but it's not the problem. That's not what's causing this. What's causing the increase in all of these, ADHD, autism. I have celiac disease, which means I'm allergic to wheat, barley, and rye. All these things that are coming about that everyone's like, oh, well, we didn't have this 30 years ago. Well, 30 years ago, you were going down the street to the local farmer's market to get your squash and your vegetables and your fruits from the local farmer who had acres and acres of land and was growing it all on his own with his family. It's not like that anymore. We go to a supermarket and everything's pesticide this and make sure you wash this and make sure you clean everything off. That's the problem. It's not just vaccines, if vaccines have anything to do with it. It's everything else that we are now. And I won't even drink Manchester water, for God only knows what it has in it. You can't trust anything now unless you grow it yourself.
You're right, and and not many people do. I mean, we were just saying, not many people have the time to raise their kids. Who's going to have time to grow a garden?
Exactly.
Or raise livestock, So
everybody relies on these prepackaged TV dinner meals that are garbage. Lean cuisine and smart choice, and it's not healthy for you. I don't give a shit what these people say.
Right.
Nothing in that is healthy for you because it's all preservatives and additives and artificial sweeteners and everything else. It's not good for you.
No, you're right.
Calorie count might be okay for you because, nothing else is.
Right. No,
nothing is real anymore.
You're absolutely right, and I want to thank you because, like I said at the very beginning, you're one of the most well-read people that I've ever met. And you're 10 years younger than I am. So you definitely have a bright future ahead of you. But I want to thank you for the great conversation, and I'll definitely be inviting you back on anytime, for different topics. And, I've always had this saying that controversy creates conversation. And, it's true. It's like you get people that, regardless of what side of the political spectrum they're on, or side of, because you and I see eye to eye on a lot of different things. Maybe not the President of the United States at this point, but, we do see eye to eye. We have the exact same thoughts on gun control, on school safety, on the death penalty issue. So, I mean, you get people that, and this is one of my biggest things, is that, we as Americans, have to stop. And the unfortunate part is the two-party system is outdated. And during the last election, you look at the two main players of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. In my opinion, we got the lesser of two evils. In many other people's opinions, we did not. But there were other candidates out there. I'm not saying that Joe Stein had a chance in hell, but Gary Johnson had a lot of great talking points under the Libertarian Party. The unfortunate truth of the matter is that so many people are stuck in it's got to be Republican or Democrat. Well, back in the 90s, or late 90s, early 2000s, Jesse Ventura won the governor of Minnesota as an independent. We don't have that mindset nationwide. You have to be one or the other. I know from Connecticut, Joe Lieberman, the only reason why he got reelected after a certain time, after he didn't win the Democratic nod for Senate, was he became an independent. But he was still a Democrat. So that's why he was voted in. Connecticut has a notorious history of always being a blue state. Murphy and Bloom, idiot, are both Democrats. Linda McMahon, who went against them in both of their elections, spent an exorbitant amount of money and lost. We have to stop voting on party lines and start listening to people who have different ideas, which are better for the country.
And this is where I'm going to leave off with this today, because I'm very passionate about it. You know how I am. People need to open their minds more, and
right.
They need to realize that what they see in their view isn't just what it is. They have a peripheral vision for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
They need to, open, and it's perfectly okay for you to agree to disagree with somebody. You and I have done it on multiple occasions.
Right.
Where we were both like, you know what? All right, obviously we just both see different things. It's cool. Have a good day.
Right.
But people need, and the thing that people need to do is they need to have conversations, and they need to stop fighting. If you can have a conversation, we're all adults. Have an adult conversation. Talk to people. Don't get loud. Don't get violent. Don't get rowdy. There's no need for it.
Right.
You need to walk away for a few minutes. You need to cool down. Go ahead. Go have a cigarette. Go have a drink. Just do whatever you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But open up your mind and stop seeing one single vision, one view of how things have to be, because that's not how it is. You can get 9 by adding 4 plus 5. But you can also get it by adding 7 plus 2.
Mm-hmm.
There's always different ways to get to the same idea. But people don't. People just see their way as their way. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's all about perspective, and they need to open their eyes, and they need to open their mind, and they need to talk, and more people need to talk and have these conversations, and be able to get it so that everyone is talking, because otherwise there's not going to be a change.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And with that, Brittany, I want to thank you for coming on today. And stay tuned. I'll be back with the wrap-up of the Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool in just a little bit.
All right. So you just listened to the fantastic conversation, actually, that I had with my friend Brittany. What are your thoughts? We brought up a lot of good points, and it's not just one issue. First of all, for all you liberals out there, okay, a gun is an inanimate object. It cannot shoot on its own without the person that's pulling the trigger. And I don't believe you understand that. I mean, you can sit and look at the gun all you want. It's not going to do anything unless you pick it up and do something with it. now they're trying to, go after the NRA. Why? The NRA is just a conglomerate. It's an organization that fights for the Second Amendment rights, and that's all there is to it. I don't feel the NRA should have anything to do with it. Unfortunately, you have a lot of these Democrats that feel differently because, first of all, I don't feel it's right that any outside companies or lobbyists or political action campaigns or any of this stuff should be able to pay for or donate to elections or whatever. You want to sponsor somebody, fine, but you shouldn't be able to send money because that kind of looks like a buy-off to me. And we see it not only with the NRA, but we also see it with big pharmaceuticals, and that's a problem because, it's a huge problem in our country. Big pharmaceuticals are the ones that keep us sick. And here's something to think about, okay? Big pharmaceuticals buy and pay for many senators and representatives to keep their drugs out in the market, okay? Hence, one of the reasons why, if you go to to the second world or third world country, you can get a cure for cancer. You can get, certain types of medications that'll help cure certain diseases for pennies on the dollar compared to what we pay for here in Connecticut, here in this country, because of big pharmaceuticals, because of our insurance and how horrible it is. Okay? Our insurance was bad way before Obamacare. Obamacare made it worse, and while the new act that Trump put into place this year made it a little better, okay, he got rid of that stupid tax mandate, the tax fine for not having insurance. And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, many people are going to lose their insurance or whatever. No, many people are going to be able to decide whether they want to keep paying for unaffordable insurance instead of being blackmailed by our government, our president. With that said, the healthcare system in this country has to be changed completely, and that has to come down to the government to change it, and it has to be done the right way. The problem is the senators and the House of Representatives and all that, and we're getting into another topic completely, but the key is that they should have the same health care and should have to live by the same health care that us normal citizens have to live by, and they don't. They have their own. They have their own insurance, and that's a problem, a big problem. But that'll be for another show. Maybe I'll be able to get an interview with a doctor and see about their, thoughts on everything. The idea of a single payer system is BS. It's absolutely ridiculous. You have to wait. You can't keep your own doctor. You have to wait for surgeries. Obviously life-threatening, I believe, get it done quickly. But if it's just something general or whatever, you have to wait a while for it. You have to wait a while for a specialist. It's a long, drawn-out process. So these people who think that a socialized healthcare system or a single-payer system is a good idea, no. And especially with the high tax rate that goes along with it. I'm sorry, but that's absolutely ridiculous. That's unacceptable in my opinion. But whatever the case is, all right, I want to thank you all for listening. Like I said, my name is Big Daddy Cool, Vinny Apicella, and you've been listening to The Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool. And we'll be back next Monday for another episode. As always, reach me on Twitter at Big Daddy Cool VA, or you could reach me on email, sportswire, BLESN @gmail.com. For everybody else, have a great weekend. I hope you have a great Easter. Yesterday was Palm Sunday. This coming Sunday is Easter Sunday and April Fool's Day at the same time. So those Easter egg hunts are going to be kind of difficult, in my opinion. With that said, we'll be back next week with a complete preview of WrestleMania happening on April 8th, 2018, live from the Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. special start time on the WWE Network. But for right now, have a great week, everybody. Make sure to leave your comments, your feedback, and let me know how you like this new idea of the Cool Down with Big Daddy Cool. Have a good week, everybody.
Just like the Pied Piper, let